This is WaXed.
Well, holla, you surfers, you goddamn nerds. I'm just kidding. We're all part of the tribe. How are the brakes looking? Got some lefts, some rights, some green rims, A-frames.
A weekly surf talk radio show.
Hopefully when you go out there, you'll find your green card and surf on the home. Poser.
With your hosts, Cyrus, Saatsaz.
All I need are some tasty waves, cool buzz, and I'm fine.
Omar, Etcheverry.
Locals only, you grommet. Stay off my beach!
And Natalie Rose with the news and weekend surf report.
Surfing is out of this world. You just can't imagine the thrill of shooting the curl. It positively surpasses every living emotion I've ever had.
On ESPN 1700.
Good morning, San Diego and Orange County and parts of LA that get the show. And if you're streaming online at ESPN Radio 1700, welcome to the online audience. I'm Cyrus, one of the hosts of WaXed Surf Talk Radio. Make sure you follow us on the Twitter at WaXed Radio, and definitely check out our website, waxedradio.com. A lot of fun things there. Among many things, of course, the podcast of our show. Every podcast is available right there on the website, waxedradio.com. Natalie Rose, good morning. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. How are you doing?
Doing okay. You look like you're sleepy. You look like you haven't had your coffee or something.
I haven't had any coffee, but I'm just content. I'm relaxed this morning.
Well, okay.
Super mellow.
I wouldn't say that's great for radio, but
No, I kind of had a little bit of a day off yesterday.
Did you?
So I think that's why, I have like the vacation mode going for just a second. But no, I feel good this morning. It's awesome. I think we're going to have awesome weather all weekend, so I really can't complain.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
It's nice to have a day off here and there, especially when you never have them.
Especially only if it's a half day, because you feel like you kind of worked.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, you don't feel so guilty. You're like, I did go to work.
Oh, there you go. Is Omar Etcheverry on the phone?
No, he's not. I think he's still sleeping.
No, he's not. He has a kid. His kid's not even 3 yet. He's not sleeping. There's no way.
So I called him 3 times. He's
Stalker
not
call
picking
him.
up,
I'd say keep doing it.
Yeah.
Call him until he answers.
Harassment.
We'll get him eventually. We're going a little bit on the intellectual tip this morning. We're going to have 2 authors on the phone. Their names are Peter Westwick and Peter Neushul. They have very little to do with surfing until the release of their new book, which is titled The World in the Curl, An Unconventional History of Surfing. They are both history professors. I'm guessing either they're tenured or they're close. At the time of the writing of the book, they were based in Santa Barbara. I believe one of them since then has left. And they're both teaching history, the University of California at Santa Barbara, to be more specific. And they've both been surfing for a long time. And they both wanted to do something, just like pretty much every other surfer in the world. They wanted to kind of do something that connected surfing with what they did professionally. In other words, make some money off the sport. And maybe they will. We'll see how the book sells. But we're going to get them on and talk about this because they have covered literally the entire history of the sport. And I think the reason why I wanted to get them on so bad was because these aren't guys who have had this long connection to the surf industry. Therefore, their perspective has been diluted in a huge way. They're not completely biased to this completely one-sided view that most of the members of the surf industry have on the sport. These are outsiders. These are outsiders who have been doing the sport for something like 30 years, and their level of expertise is, when it comes to research, is unparalleled. I mean, they're both doctorates, and to get a doctorate, all you have to do endlessly is just research, sit in a library, find computer databases, interview people, and that's what they did. And they created a history book on the sport. So we're going to get them on and ask a bunch of questions. And then, of course, later on in the program, we'll do some news. Why don't we get a surf report with Natalie Rose? Take it away. Whenever you're ready.
Visit our website, waxedradio.com, to get complete show.
Hold on. I was trying to get Omar on, and we almost had him, so we had a little bit of a
Okay, and that's on the air, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, hold on 1 second.
What are you doing over there?
I was trying to get Omar on right in the middle.
Well, you just faded down the music. You faded down the open of the segment. This is why you have coffee in the morning.
I know.
We've had this talk.
We're going to get straight into the surf report. So
where's the music? At least turn the bed up.
The music isn't on.
Oh, there you go.
There
okay.
it goes.
Not all the way, though.
Well, I like this jam.
I'm sure you do, but people want to hear your voice, too, when you give
All
the
right.
report.
Sorry about that, people. We had a little complication with trying to get Omar on. We almost had him, but we lost him. Anyways, for the surf today, it is flat. It's been flat for 3 weeks, and I can't believe it. I don't even know what surf looks like anymore. It's like 1 to 3 feet, waist high. We have a southwest swell that is giving a couple areas a little bit of a bump, but there's not much action going on. We have overcast down at the beach for this morning, but I'm sure the sun will pop out. It has been popping out as day goes on. As for the water, it is freezing. I don't know where this cold water is coming from. Maybe from the south? I don't know. South brings warm water, doesn't it? So I don't know.
No, it doesn't bring warm water when it's winter in the south. That's I think that's a huge reason why every time we get the south swell coming in, the water temperature drops like multiple degrees.
But all I know is there are no waves. There are no waves.
There's a little bit.
No, I was at the beach yesterday. It was like knee high. It's so small.
It's
super
small.
And I was looking at it at Oceanside this morning before I came down, and it was still like, it's super, super small. Just like, it's kind of sad. It's really depressing.
It's not as bad as it was, say, like a week ago. You know, I was out on the water yesterday, and I got like 10 rides. I mean, they're not super long, and they're not, anything to, go home and yell about. But there's waves. It's just you need a longboard, and you can't expect much,
Yeah.
And I'm guessing you probably shouldn't be going out there when the tide is high either.
No, and we have a low tide this morning too, so it is a little bit drained, which doesn't help anything.
Depends. I always say a low tide. It's always better to have a low tide when it's this flat than a high tide. Because at least with a low tide, when it is drained, waves are being forced to kind of break more often than not. So you'll get a little more now than you would when the tide's completely high and everything's just literally flat. Like no waves are breaking. You just get these little like bumps coming through here and there that aren't doing anything. The folks over at PacificWaveRider.com, they tweeted at us at our Twitter handle. Mike, who runs a site, terrific surf forecast website. He's up in Ventura. He's saying, like the movie Groundhog Day, this is becoming a recurring dream. Surf is knee-high with an occasional plus at the point this a.m. Windless, sunny morning. Best bet is between 10 and 1 a.m. at the beach breaks. Either side of town, big tidal swings continue. We had a huge full moon a couple days ago.
Crazy full moon.
Yeah, it was. And I think I'm sure that's playing around with stuff as well. Omar just sent me a message. He said he's ready for you to call him if you want to get him on.
I called him after he sent that message.
And he's still not answering.
He's still not answering. He's like, call me when you're ready. And that's why I was like, with the surf report, I'm like, he said he's ready and he's not picking up. I'm like, come on, Omar. Figure it out.
What a lunatic. All right. Well, we'll get Omar on and we'll get the two authors of the book, The World and the Curl, An Unconventional History of Surfing, with history professors Peter Neushul and Peter Westwick. They're going to join the show next and give us a terrific, informative segment of radio, especially pertaining to surfing. This is WaXed on ESPN 1700.
Visit our website, waxedradio.com, to get complete show podcasts. And follow us on all social media at WaXed Radio. Now, more Wax.
Yeah, welcome back to WaXed Surf Talk Radio here on ESPN 1700. O-Dog, we finally have him, right? Is he on the phone? Turn up pod 1 real quick. Omar, are you there?
Alive.
Yeah, we're
alive.
What happened there, brother?
I'm not sure. I was sitting in my office staring at my phone, and it wasn't doing anything.
I think
I have no idea.
you probably stared into space, and then like 5 minutes went by.
That's weird.
Well, it's good to have you on. Are you ready to get our guests on the program?
Yeah, I have read a lot about these guys. I am very interested.
Beautiful. So am I, and we both. I'm sure we all have a lot of questions. Our next guests are the authors of a new book. It's titled The World and the Curl, An Unconventional History of Surfing. And the term unconventional certainly applies here because both these gentlemen, outside of maybe surfing for a long time, have very little, if not nothing, to do with the surf industry, which is, in my opinion, refreshing in a lot of ways. It's a privilege to have on the program Peter Westwick and Peter Neushul. Gentlemen, how are you doing this morning?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, the pleasure's all ours, and it's. I'm sure you get a million jokes thrown at you guys about the fact that you're both Peters.
Yeah.
It makes it a little easier at the same time in terms of remembering your name. First off, tell us about the book. What inspired you guys to write the book, The World and the Curl?
Well,
Go ahead, Peter.
All right. This is Westwick. It basically started several years ago. We both are historians of science, and we knew each other through academic circles from conferences and things in our field. And we'd actually both worked, had postdoc appointments at Caltech. So we knew each other through the field, and I found out that Peter Neushul had a ranch boat, a nice little Boston whaler. I said, well, shoot, we got to go surfing sometime. So we were actually up at the ranch, or actually just past the ranch at Coho one day surfing, and we're kind of talking about, history and talking about surfing a little bit too, and the idea came to us that, you could really do a pretty interesting class on the history of surfing. There's quite a bit of science and technology wrapped up in it, quite a bit of environmental history, a lot of which we brought into the book as we did our research. But we just said, it'd be a fun class to teach. It'd obviously be pretty popular. We could get a lot of students into the classroom, but also hit them with a lot of real history, history of ancient Hawaii, of the colonial period in Hawaii, and then 20th century U.S., military-industrial complex, race, gender issues, all kinds of interesting things, the surf industry, commercialization, along with the science, technology, environment. So the class is really the starting point for the book. And then once we did the class, we got, great reception from students. Obviously, the class was super popular. We were turning away hundreds of students each time we taught it.
Right.
And then the other thing was that, when people found out, just our friends and people we ran into on the street found out we were teaching this class, everybody said, oh, man, I'd love to take that class. Can I come sit in on it, or what are you guys going to do with it? So then we kind of realized that, there is this great wider interest in surfing, especially among non-surfers. I mean, the first day we taught the class, both times, we kind of asked all the students the first day, how many people here don't surf? And actually most of the students raised their hands. So most of the people in the class were non-surfers. And, surfing is everywhere in general culture these days. So we just kind of thought, a lot of people want to learn about this. Let's do a book.
And here it is. And the book's called The World in the Curl. I'm sure available at all bookstores, Amazon, you name it. The author is Peter Westwick. Peter Neushul join us here. You mentioned, by the way, when you guys first met and surfed, one of you had the boat and you guys went up to the ranch. Are you referring to Hollister Ranch? Like that area?
Yeah, we well, of course, there's Hollister Ranch, and beyond there's something called Bixby Ranch, which is right around the base of Point Conception. So I've been going there for over 20 years, long time. And these days, back by the time Peter and I were doing it together, we would always go past Hollister, hit Bixby, and then maybe go to Hollister for a second session on the way back. But so we've been, we went there a number of times, but I've been going there for many years.
And with all those years of surfing there, and I apologize for digressing from the book, but what's especially as historians, and I'm sure you apply some of this to your book. What's the feel of that area? I mean, I've heard a lot of really crazy territorial stories about how the people who live there just don't want people like yourselves coming up there in boats, even though it's legal. Has the reception been warm? Are there issues when you approach that area? Like, what's the experience like?
Well, I mean, I think it's varied over the years. Early on, when I was, I guess when I was younger, I used to go to Hollister a lot, and sometimes places like Rights and Lefts, you have access there. You have to own property or know somebody that owns property to have access to the ranch, and so there could conceivably be some conflict between the so-called boaters and the residents, the owners. But it's sort of and we do cover this in the book. It's I know the latest magazine had a thing on localism or on lack of waves, but if that is sort of the classic place. If you own property there, you're going to have access to magnificent. There's 3 or 4 point breaks. There's tons of beach breaks. I mean, it's an amazing place to surf, and it's also, unlike Santa Barbara, it's not. The Channel Islands aren't cutting off the swell, so you're going to get very good south swells. Virtually any swell that hits is going to hit it really well. But at this point, I'm not giving up secret spots or something. The ranch has been around for obviously forever.
Oh, and when it comes to that area, give it up. I mean, I'm always outraged by the fact that these people, for whatever reason, have this exclusive access. I know they were grandfathered into the Coastal Rights Acts that give permission to the public for pretty much the entire coast of California except for this portion. So give that up. I'm always outraged by the fact that for whatever reason these guys have been able to circumvent the laws and keep this area to themselves. It's crazy to me.
I mean, well, the public does have access. I mean, if you go up there in a boat, you have access.
Right, but how many people can afford that? You know, I mean, that's not exactly affordable. You know,
that's true.
It's very impractical. Odell, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, you know, a lot of my friends, you'd be surprised how affordable it is. I have friends that take any kind of boat into that place. It's pretty hilarious. I think the funniest part about the ranch is the fact that there's the feud between the boaters and the landowners. A few of my friends bought land there and moved there. It's an amazing place. But my first question is for Peter Westwick. I know you talk about surfing being so influential, and, you know, a lot of people that wrote articles about your book really bring that up, how you're saying how influential surfing is. I was in the clothing industry for a long time, and it always amazed me that in the United States at one point, surfing apparel was the highest distributed clothing in America for a while. Why do you think that is? I mean, it looks like you dove into it in this book. Why do you think surfing is so influential?
You know, this is part of the kind of the tension, I think, in surfing and that the surf industry is constantly trying to walk is a lot of the appeal of surfing is this kind of counterculture. And it's got this kind of rebellious, subversive aspect to it and this kind of countercultural angle. You know, surfers are kind of rejecting mainstream society. They're going out, they're just pursuing happiness. It's this kind of hedonistic, anti-materialist pursuit. And a lot of that traces back, the lineage traces back to the ancient Hawaiians, this kind of romantic, natural pursuit. You're outdoors, it's just you and nature. And so there's that side of surfing, which I think underpins a lot of the appeal, including the appeal to, you know, kids in Topeka, Kansas, who are going out and buying Quicksilver T-shirts.
Right. Well, and the sex appeal as well, right? We used to bring that up in meetings, you know, I mean, who doesn't want to be, you know, the quote-unquote tan guy at the beach that gets every chick? I mean, sex appeal is very influential in our society, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of it, large part of it. So there's that aspect to it, and then, but the other side to it, which is becoming more and more prominent over the 20th century, is the commercial, the middle class, kind of mainstream. You know, it's just a healthy outdoor sport. We're trying to professionalize it. We're trying to commercialize it. We're trying to basically make money off it, whether you're the surfers or the surfwear makers. And how do you do that and still retain this kind of countercultural edge? You know, how countercultural can you be when you're a multi-billion-dollar multinational corporation?
Which the surfing industry has felt a lot through the 80s, 90s, and now once again right now it's had a huge dip.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very interesting clash between, you know, bean counters going for the 20% growth and remaining cool.
Yeah, exactly. And going too big, I mean, some companies, you know, Ocean Pacific maybe, or some of these other ones in the past, kind of think they got too big. And there's a great quote, I think, by Michael Thompson in the Gotcha book about, you know, size is the enemy of cool.
I love that book. He's a great guy. He's a friend of mine. He's so funny.
Yeah.
It's a great quote. That's very accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you walk that line? And, you know, if you get too big, then you kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. So there's this fundamental tension, but the surf industry is a perfect expression of it, but I think it runs through all of surfing.
Right.
The industry, but also surf culture in general. How does surfing still keep cool? You know, and if you are surfing in a wave pool in Allentown, Pennsylvania, is that the same thing as what the ancient Hawaiians were doing on Waikiki? That kind of thing is part of what we're trying to capture in the book.
That's cool. Just the overall allure. And in your mind, what do you see in the future for surfing? I mean, you did such a historic book about it and the appeal of it and why it's so groundbreaking. I mean, do you see it kind of just getting bigger and bigger in the future or going up and down?
Yeah, you know, I mean, first of all, historians are always wary of making predictions just because we've seen so many predictions in the past turn out to be wrong. But, you know, we get asked this quite a bit. And I think this tension is there's kind of like a built-in governor or a brake on surfing that when it starts getting too big, too mainstream, the kind of countercultural side raises its head and kind of pulls it back a little bit, and we see these dips. So, I mean, surfing is getting more and more popular. More and more people are doing it. You know, the more crowded it gets, though, then the less fun it is, and maybe the less interested people in are taking it up. When they go out, you know, if your first session is with 300 other people at Rincon, or trestles or Malibu, maybe you're not going to be quite as hooked on it as you might have been.
Right.
You know, surfing is spreading. It's spreading around the world. I think a lot of the growth is going to come not so much in California or the traditional heartlands, but spreading around the world to new places. Some of that driven by wetsuit technology, other things, and bringing women to the sport. I mean, half of the population, the surf industry was very slow to figure this out, along with everybody else. But half the population is now taking it up. So you see more and more women. So women, different ethnic groups coming in, that will help the growth. And they're talking about new technology, but at some point, the more commercial and technologized it is, maybe the less of the appeal it has. So, again, that tension kind of acts as maybe a brake on the growth itself.
Which is probably a good thing. I don't know if growth is necessarily a good thing at this point for surfing as a participant. I'm sure if you make money off the sport, you're going to disagree with me. But if you're someone who just simply participates, I don't see how growth is good. Yeah, I mean, this is a very limited resource, and we're joined by Peter Westwick and Peter Neushul, authors of the book "The World in the Curl." Are you guys? Do you consider yourselves scientists or historians, or both?
Historians.
Both of us have studied some science, but we're historians. We look at history of science, history of technology, so we're rooted in history.
Well, maybe this question will still apply then. In your opinion, and hopefully maybe the research that you conducted to create this book might help with this, why is it so difficult to create artificial reefs? Because surfing is, it's a very limited resource. I mean, there's only so many places in the world you can surf. There's only so many peaks, that where a quality wave is created. And naturally, the surfers will flock to those little areas and suddenly have, like you said, hundreds of people trying to fight for the same wave. Why is it so hard to simply, go to places where waves aren't breaking or where they're not breaking properly and just, add something to the surface, to the ocean surface to create good waves? Why has it been so hard to make that happen?
Well, first of all, we would argue in our book that almost all waves are artificial already.
Okay.
The classic example would be the wedge, for example. That is an entirely man-made wave. And then you look at Newport Beach, for example, all the jetties there. All those jetties create waves. Those are all man-made waves.
Right.
So in a sense, those are a form of successful, although not necessarily purposeful, obviously, artificial reefs.
Right.
Now, yes, you're right. Surfrider, for example, attempted to put in what was called Pratt's Reef, in which they used geotextile bags full of sand, which, frankly, over time would have eroded and the reef would have disappeared. So it was obviously semi-experimental.
Right.
And there is a company that puts these reefs in around the world, or has been until recently.
Yeah.
Been doing that with limited success. I think if you do the science right, if you do the engineering right, you could, but there are huge environmental issues as well attached to putting in artificial reefs. But can they be successful? I mean, you just look at the effect of shore protection measures on creating surf. Sure, of course they can be successful if they're properly researched and engineered, but the way that most waves, artificial waves, like, for example, the wave in Santa Barbara that comes off the jetty the breakwater there, that's not intentional at all. It's a fantastic wave. You can get great pictures of yourself, from Stearns Wharf getting barreled and whatnot, but that was unintentional. You could perhaps in the future have shore protection measures that have surf as a component of it. In other words, we're going to create the shore protection, but what will be the impact on surf by putting in this measure?
Yeah, I mean, there's the environmental aspect where, I think the coastal engineers have become more and more cognizant of the ripple effects that go out from any one of these. You just put it in one spot, but then this disrupts the sand flows, for miles up and down coast. And then you've got the possible liability of, some homeowner who's 5 miles down the beach who suddenly finds his house getting washed out to sea is going to sue you.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then there's the economic issue of, okay, these reefs cost, millions of dollars to put in. Who's going to pay for that, and what is the justification for that investment?
Yeah.
And this is the same thing with wave pools. I mean, wave pools seem to be, okay, here's a great way to create waves, so, get rid of crowds at your local break by having a wave pool. But they're very expensive to build and maintain, and how do you justify the economics of it? If you can generate, 3 waves per minute the cost per wave is going to be just through the roof, and how many surfers are going to pay that?
Yeah, that's true. And to be honest, even with the wave pools, the technology even hasn't been that great until very recently. I'm sure you guys have seen that that artificial wave out in the Basque Country of Spain, Wave Garden. That seems,
that looks great.
Yeah, it's like the first one I've ever seen where I actually wanted to surf. All the other ones look like they'll just spit you up and chuck you somewhere in like 2 seconds. But that one actually looks fun. But at least with those artificial ones, there is an economic model you can develop where you charge people and hopefully people will pay to do it. But you're right. In the ocean, I mean, how are they going to make that money back? And who's going to spend millions of dollars to create those things? Natalie Rose had a question for you guys. I'm sorry, Natalie, go away.
Yeah, you talked about how when surfing becomes too big, I guess in the public, that it can have a negative reaction within surfers. And I was wondering, when you guys were making this or releasing the book, did you guys have any negative reaction towards your idea of creating this book, towards from the surf community, or did you get a lot of support?
I don't think we ran into any negative reaction. We talked to quite a few surfers, some long-time involvement in the pro surfing and the surf industry, and I think they were thankful or interested that academic historians were going to be taking a fairly serious look at that and hopefully bringing in some new perspectives on it. I don't think anybody was fearful that by selling this book that I don't know if the gist of your question is by selling this book all of a sudden millions of people are going to be taking up the sport. I don't think that was too much of a concern.
What about with creating a class? Because you have a class and you're teaching it to people, so then more people are learning about it. Were people negative about that as well?
Not that I know of. I don't know. Peter Neushul, did you run across this?
Sure, we were oversubscribed with that. I mean, it was amazing. That's one of the things that prompted us to do the book, was that there's just so many people interested in the topic. And to credit UC Santa Barbara, we have a really strong environmental studies department here, and the class was taught jointly in environmental studies and in history. And in fact, we had a grant to help teach the class that was funded in part by the students, by the Coastal Fund at UC Santa Barbara, which enabled us to invite guest lecturers like Sean Thompson and so on to come and speak to the students. But we were oversubscribed. We had virtually no negativity in producing the book.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully the idea is that, if there are surfers out there who've taken the class or read the book, or even non-surfers, they come away with a greater appreciation for the history of the sport, and it helps them understand the current context more, not just, the commercial or the pro aspects, but also, say, the environmental legacies of it and the issues involved with the environment and beach access. I mean, places like the Hollister Ranch. But that whole issue of beach access goes back for well over 100 years on the California coast. And, why is it that we're able to go up and surf Malibu or some of these other spots and just walk up and park our car and walk right out? That was not by any means a preordained issue, that you should be able to walk up to the beach and get across private properties. So hopefully reading our book, surfers will come away with a better appreciation for the sport. And hopefully non-surfers start to understand a little bit more about why surfers are so passionate about it.
Beautiful. And we have Peter Westwick and Peter Neushul, authors of the book, The World and the Curl, here on WaXed. O-Dog.
Yeah, my question is for both of you. You can either each answer it separately or together. So, it's a history book. You probably did a ton of research. What was the most interesting thing you guys discovered while writing this book?
Peter, you want to take that one first? Good question.
Peter?
It's a great question. I'll just have a cameo on it. We were looking at the history of wave prediction, which of course, probably all of us, many of us listening, everybody's checked the waves this morning by looking on their computer. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to look at the of course there's no waves, but we wanted to figure out the history of that, and we narrowed it down to World War II, and the prediction of whether or not there could, of course, be no waves when you sent hundreds of thousands of men onto the beach at Normandy. And so we were in the middle of teaching the class. We were researching this, and we learned that the oceanographer at the time who had made the call that day was a former professor at UCSB, and that he was alive and living about a stone's throw from Peter Westwick's house.
Wow.
So
Wow.
the fact that someone that old was still around, this was he eventually became a geologist, a fellow by the name of John Kroll. And then literally while the class was going on, we went down and interviewed him. So it was, that to me was sort of the beauty of, of something special happening in history. And we, of course, tried to impart that on the students and so on, but that's just a story of one of the, those are the sorts of sources we looked for, we call them primary sources, people or groups of documents that give insight into really fundamental things when it comes to, in this case, wave prediction.
Wow.
And what an unforgiving coastal area. I mean, for those that don't understand that Normandy, it's cold, it's not fun. Yeah, and the bottom has these big tidal runnels in it, which are really dangerous if you're hopping out of a boat and can't swim very well, and someone's trying to kill you with artillery fire from the shore. And you fall into I read a lot of. They lost a lot of those. Their boats that were going in by hitting the rocks. It's crazy.
Absolutely, there was a lot, and that was anticipated, and they knew that would happen, having done lots of assaults before, but they did make an accurate prediction of the wave heights that day, and had they delayed, as some you may know, the waves got a lot bigger a lot later and actually destroyed some of the what they called mulberries, the artificial harbors that they put in to offload all the material they needed to support the biggest invasion, amphibious assault in the history of the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
And Westwick?
Yeah, I would probably, there's a couple of kind of similar deals where we were just in the archives and we ran across, what we discovered were much bigger stories. A similar one at Caltech during World War II, actually. And we were in there looking into Bob Simmons. Everybody kind of knows Bob Simmons, the role of, probably maybe the most influential designer, surfboard designer in the last 100 years. But we were looking into his Caltech records. And, we were both pretty familiar with what Caltech had done during World War II for the military, and it turned out that there's a huge effort in airdrop torpedoes for aerial torpedo bombers. And we looked at what Simmons was taking for classes and then what his professors were doing, and actually one of his professors, he took his hydraulics class, and there was this professor was basically running this torpedo program. And this is where, everybody talks about Lindsay Lord's book about PT boats and planing holes and stuff like that, but Simmons probably, if you go back and look what he was doing in these classes and the facilities they were working with these wave tanks and high-speed water tunnels and stuff, this is just, you start to understand how he could make these contributions because he was so immersed in, these amazingly complex calculations and differential equations in boundary layer effects and turbulence and all this stuff. So again, kind of just expanding the story out a little bit and bringing in some new stuff that you just run across in the archives. It's a neat feeling when you start to see this bigger story unfolding and bringing in new angles that you hadn't really seen before in the literature.
Wow, that's fantastic. And we're joined by Peter Westwick and Peter Neushul, authors of the book The World in the Curl. A quick question. We'll let you guys go in just a moment. Thank you so much for taking some time this morning to join the program. When Has surfing always had this idealistic kind of hippie vibe to it? If you go in the water today, there are plenty of, I guess what you can say is traditional athletes, people who might even, fit the stereotype of like your jock out there. But more times than not, it's a very artistic sort of form out there. People look at surfing and they like to mix art with it. They like to mix, like just free thinking, almost like the antithesis of what like a Mickey Dora would see with surfing. Has that always been there? Has that kind of evolved recently? Like, what's your take on that?
I think it's always been there. I think it is evolving. You're seeing professional surfers now who I think are training and watching their diet and doing exercises and things that are specific to perhaps because of the more acrobatic nature of surfing these days. But I think that's always been there, and part of that is just you're interacting with the ocean in order to perform or succeed on a wave. You have to understand it, and you have to spend some time looking at the beach and the break and the period of the swell, and you're kind of part of this natural environment, and that I think feeds to the sort of vibration that you're describing there.
Right. And I guess, like if you look at it, let's say like a triathlete or someone who loves to canoe or, I'm trying to blame, like, you look at, there's plenty of other sports where you're interacting with nature. But for whatever reason, like, style doesn't apply to those sports nearly as much as it does with surfing. And I guess that's always been something I've always wondered about. Like, why is style such an important part of this sport? Whereas there are plenty of other sports where you're outdoors, where you're connecting directly with nature. Yet you don't see that nearly as much with those sports as you do with surfing. Like, in your research, like, could you nail down a reason for that? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, or is it just something that just kind of exists?
Well, I think some of this goes, and I think you're right. I mean, we may try to make the comparison to other sports and what makes surfing unique. And I mean, one of the things is this kind of romantic, countercultural aspect to it. And if you look at other sports, I mean, so like this whole kind of retro movement now with Elias and the Dora Challenge, where you have to shape your own wood board and go out and surf J-Bay with a wool shirt on, no wetsuit. I mean, what other sport has that aspect to it? I mean, I guess rock climbing has the kind of traditional, freestyle and all that stuff, and not the big mountain style assault. But what other sport? Are tennis players going out and carving their own tennis rackets, or golfers, or skiers? Are skiers rejecting the modern skis to go back and ride wood skis?
Right.
But surfing has this whole kind of the Alaya movement and all that stuff, which I think is I think in some respects unique. And I think a lot of that kind of romantic aspect of it really traces back, and this is what makes surfing different, is Hawaii, and the origins in Hawaii are really crucial to that. And the fact that the Hawaiians were just doing this, and you see this in the original travelers' accounts from the European explorers who first come to Polynesia, and they're saying, these people are out, the men and women are out riding waves, and it's just, the most supreme pleasure, and it's just fun. It has no productive aspect to it. There's nothing. I mean, skiing always had this kind of, as for the military, as for transportation, there's always some utilitarian thing to it, where surfing was just pure fun,
right,
from the outset. And I think there's this kind of personal expression to it. And I think that the Hawaiian roots, and we really try to bring this out in the book, that this is why Hawaii is so important to the history of surfing, is it contributes that kind of romantic, countercultural vibe to it from the outset, which really sets it apart in the Europeans' minds when they first encounter it from what the Europeans were familiar with. And it kind of plants that seed from the outset of surfing as being this, it's different from what the Europeans thought of as sport. And I think that has kind of persisted, and why a lot of surfing now kind of, harkens back to those Hawaiian roots. And that's why Hawaii, we think, is really crucial to the history of surfing.
That's a great answer. It's in a nutshell, you're right. I mean, where it originated, you get that vibe even from like 100+ years ago. Are you guys still at UC Santa Barbara? Are you both still teaching there if students want to take any of your classes?
We haven't been able to teach the class the last few years because I am now at USC.
Oh.
So I'm at USC. Peter Neushul is still teaching occasionally at UCSB, and we just haven't been able to work out a way to coordinate, either getting myself back to UCSB or maybe getting Peter down to USC to teach it. And we get, people are always asking us, when are you going to teach the class again? And we just haven't figured out how to coordinate it. But we'd love to teach again. We have all the, ton of great images and great surf video clips and stuff like that to show. And it's just a matter of figuring out the logistics of it, I think.
What's the reason for a surfer like yourself going from Santa Barbara, where some of the best waves in the world are, to USC? They're writing my paychecks. Gotcha. Fair enough.
That's a good reason.
It's the oldest story for surfers, right? Is surfers are always trying to figure out a way to make a living and still be able to surf.
Yes.
So I think everybody, in some respect, Duke was wrestling with the same question 100 years ago, and I guess this is my answer to it.
What is the closest surf spot to USC?
Well, I still live in Santa Barbara, so
that's a commute.
Yes, wow. Well, it's a commute, but occasionally I throw a board in the car, it's a commute. But on the other hand, every time I'm driving back home and I come around the corner at Rincon, I'm reminded why I'm making the drive. So.
There you go. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. Peter Westwick, Peter Neushul, the author of the book, The World in the Curl, available at your local bookstores, Amazon.com. I'm sure BarnesandNobles.com has it. You name it, regardless of who the publisher is or who the bookseller is, you'll find it there. And again, the book is called The World in the Curl, An Unconventional History of Surfing. Gentlemen, thank you very much for taking a lot of time this morning. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, likewise. And we'll be back with some news here on WaXed on ESPN 1700.
Visit our website, WaXedradio.com, to get complete show podcasts and follow us on all social media at WaXed Radio. Now, here's a recap of the weekend surf news.
Yeah, special thanks again to Peter Westwick, Peter Neushul, authors of the book The World and the Curl. It was a pleasure to have him on. I could have had him on for like 5 hours. I mean, there was like endless questions we could have asked him, but and you know, I received an expedited copy of the book. You know, I found out about this earlier this week. I called the publisher. I'm like, send me a copy of this book now. They did, because they're professionals. And I skimmed through it. I mean, it's a great read. I mean, it's not one of these books where you're going to get bored by it. It's very captivating. To me, there's nothing better than a book that is nonfiction yet written in a sense like a novel. And this doesn't necessarily go that route, but it's entertaining in that regards. You know, like and nothing drags on forever. I read a bunch of chapters. Terrific book, especially if you're a fan of surfing. The book again is called The World and the Curl.
I was kind of bummed. I wanted to ask him how long did it take to do all the research and put it together?
Years.
You know what I mean?
I guarantee it took years.
That could have gone for 2 hours. Those guys are insane.
How awesome would it be to get credit? Like, I'm in class. You know what I mean? I'm like,
that's why the people are in the class. I mean, come on, credit for surfing.
I got credit for watching surf videos all day.
It's incredible.
Yeah, right.
Well, and they're not, you know, they're older gentlemen, so I'm guessing like they probably just have a couple classes a semester. I mean, they're definitely tenured if they've been teaching for this long. I'm guessing. I mean, I shouldn't assume anything, but if I had to guess, I would say that they probably did have a decent amount of time to work on this book. And if he's commuting from Santa Barbara to USC, that he can't have more than like 2 classes, you know, and they're probably on the same day. That's an insane commute. It's pure insanity. Because you have to drive through the heart of LA to get to USC, you know?
I don't know. Some teachers are so crazy. I went to school here. I had a teacher commute from San Francisco.
To what? Cal State San Marcos?
Yeah.
How many? What do you have? Like 1 class a week, or how did that?
He would do like 2 classes
on the same day.
Yeah, and just like stay down here and then go back.
No,
up.
It's crazy. There was an instructor in San Francisco State many years ago who would commute, and I kid you not, he would commute from Hawaii, and he would literally fly back and forth 1 day a week. And it was crazy. I remember he was telling the story, and I dropped the class because like all of a sudden he gave us this reading list, and it was like 8 books in like in a summer, and I was like, screw this, dude, I'm out. But I just remember like I just took it for that 1 day, and he was sharing the story with us, going like, hey, you know, so if I can do this, you can do anything. I'm like, I guess. It was insanity.
You're like in and out.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, it's heavy. But yeah, you're right, dude. People do crazy commutes just so they can stay wherever they're living. Anyway,
I'm checking out pictures of these guys online. There's some cool surfing photos of them too.
Mm-hmm.
Guys are legit.
Yeah, they're definitely surfers. There's no question about that. Omar, you do a crazy commute. You commute from like Santa Cruz to like San Francisco and sometimes Marin County and sometimes Napa, right?
Oh yeah, I did 1,300 miles last week.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's the life of a sales rep, though.
That's true.
Pretty normal, unfortunately.
You gotta spend money to make money.
At least you have that Prius now, so you're saving some gas money, right?
Love my Prius. They're great.
And what do you do? Do you just fold the back seats down so you can just tuck your surfboards in there if you ever want to get out?
Totally. You know, you can fit so many boards in a Prius. I've fit 9 before.
Jesus.
I could not believe it.
Because it's a hatchback, right?
Yeah, and then the other day I was like, I wanted to stretch before I went surfing. It sounds hilarious, but I just jumped in the back and stretched. It's so weird.
What? What do you mean by that? Like you just you laid flat on your back?
Yeah, things are huge.
That's crazy. Oh.
Shaggin' wagon.
Yeah.
Hey.
Have you done that?
Come on, guys. I'm married to the 2.5-year-old.
That doesn't mean you can't go in there and rekindle the love.
Yeah, I don't think there's any hot and heavy nights in the Prius.
Oh, dude, I could
right now.
Oh man, for all the things I wish about when it comes to being, I mean, dude, when you're 35 like I am and still single, it's a nightmare, dude. This is not where someone should be in life. But I also think to all my married friends, and I'm like, dude, you probably have to like schedule your sex sessions. You're all, okay, honey, how about 9 p.m. Thursday night? Let's light some candles. You know, like, I don't know. That. So I can't imagine that's, like, super awesome. But still, you're in a much better place than I am. What is going on? Sorry, what?
No, it's true. Well, but even if you schedule, then a 2.5-year-old will just interrupt. And you pretty much got, pretty much just give up on it and surf and then play with the kids.
Oh wow, Natalie Rose, what's going on in the news? It's going to be a condensed version. What's happening?
Well, Adrian Buchan,
yes,
if I say his name correctly, he won the Billabong Pro Tahiti, and he beat Kelly Slater in the finals, but even though he might have won the battle, he is not leading the war because Kelly Slater is still ahead in the ASP World title. And if he, right now, with leading it, I believe it'll be his 12th ASP World title. Am I correct?
That's what he's going for, yeah.
So that's pretty cool. He's still got it. Kelly Slater.
Oh, yeah. Well, crazy thing.
So awesome.
Well, there were a lot of crazy things about this contest. The Billabong Pro Tahiti, which just wrapped up. Adrian Buchan, I didn't know how to pronounce his name until I watched this contest.
Buchan.
It's Buchan. Thank you. It's not Buchan. It's Buchan. I didn't.
Adrian Buchan. I totally apologize.
Don't know. Who cares? No one knows who he is.
He is the nicest guy in the world. He comes from an area in Australia that's somewhat out in the middle of nowhere. They would kind of compare it to like someone, say, with Southern hospitality. So it's a very similar area. The guy is extremely nice, married, got a kid. He's been
you
married
can't be mean
forever.
to that guy.
So yeah, it's as you saw, the tour really supported him winning, and he's a great guy.
They did. Even Slater was happy for him, and he rarely is happy for his competitors when they beat him.
Yeah.
But so Ace Buchan, that's right, and that's what they kept referring to him as. But he's I think this is like his second contest victory ever. Correct me if I'm wrong.
And it was against Kelly Slater, 2 for 2, one of the only surfers in the world.
What was the other contest?
Yeah, it was in France, and it's the Quicksilver France Pro.
Wow, when was that? I usually recall these things. I don't remember that.
It was a long time ago. Maybe not that long ago. Maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. But
okay.
Boy, he just got shacked in the final, and Kelly couldn't find a tube to save his life.
Wow. Well, there was controversy in this contest. So Slater and Buchan were in the finals. Kelly Slater, until this moment, had never lost in the finals of the Billabong Pro Tahiti. I think he was undefeated, and this was his 5th final. But the controversy again, these judges are. I don't know if they need to just find new judges altogether. I don't know if they need to sit these guys down and kind of give them a good long 3-hour lecture on everything they're doing wrong and how to correct these mistakes. For starters, and O-Dog, you and I have talked about this repeatedly, at least off the air, maybe not that much on the air. Enough with handing out these perfect 10s like they're just, like you're just handing out nickels to homeless people. Like, dude, a perfect 10 should be a very exclusive score.
You get a 10, and you get a 10.
Yeah, yay, kindergartners. Yeah. Everybody's great.
But this whole contest has been, crazy from the beginning. I mean, remember when they were picking the wild cards and stuff?
Yes, and Jamie O'Brien and Ricardo dos Santos and the trials got in a fight. Yeah, you're right. There's been a lot of... But yeah, these perfect 10s, it's like, slow your roll. Enough.
Oh, it's terrible. I mean, and to define a perfect 10, and every wave is different. They're just blowing it. And I think the funny thing is a lot of sports operate in a 1 to 5 range. Now the sport of surfing has a 1 to 10 range with decimal points. Come on, you guys don't have a brain? Are you serious? You can't, there's a huge area, even between 9 and 10, that they can utilize to define each wave.
Yeah, exactly.
So therefore, that wave is better than that one. I could go on and on. It's just so irritating.
No, you're right. And
it's ruining the sport. I mean, in the past, with the good, when we had better head judges, a perfect 10 would get the spotlight on national TV.
You're absolutely
Sometimes
right.
Even world TV would get a perfect 10 would get attention. Nowadays, it's like when you're having 6 an event, it's ridiculous.
You're
seriously ruining the sport.
You're absolutely right, and they're just giving them out like candy now. And the other thing is, and they totally screwed this up, Kelly Slater should have received the priority when Buchan went for a wave that he just didn't get. It's not like he changed his mind with time to spare. He went for it, didn't get it. Kelly should have had the priority. They didn't give it to him, and in a lot of ways, that could have cost him this contest. Because that resulted in Buchan, the next wave Buchan got was one of his really high scores. And as everyone knows in these contests, dude, it's the wave it's probably the biggest part of it is wave selection. The wave defines your score in most cases. But nonetheless, congrats to Ace Buchan for winning the Billabong Pro Tahiti, and Kelly Slater now in the driver's seat. for his 12th world title with just four contests remaining. And these are all very strong events for Slater. So he certainly has to be the favorite to win another world title.
I wonder.
Midway point, and it should be a fun race.
Yes,
I wonder what it's going to be like. You know how they do the Kelly and the Levin in his name? You know what I mean?
I don't know. I'm sure they've thought of something, but then again, these are people with not even high school degrees running the marketing department, so who knows? All right.
They might spell it wrong. They'll spell it wrong.
Yeah, they'll mess it up somehow. But we got to wrap it up. Thanks again to Peter Westwick and Peter Neushul, authors of the book The World and the Curl. O-Dog, thanks as always, brother. We'll be back next week. Natalie Rose, great job. Thank you as well. This is WaXed. And make sure you follow us on Twitter at WaXed Radio and visit our website, waxedradio.com, where we podcast all our shows. We'll be back next week. This is WaXed on ESPN 1700.
Oh, yeah.
That is it for us today, and we will leave you with I can't do it. No. We'll do it live. Do it live. Thing sucks.